Thank you. On behalf of my company, I want to thank the Global Compact Network for this great opportunity, the organizers of the event, and just really thank you for the great work that you do to champion social and economic challenges and resolving them, including gender equality and diversity overall. So I thought about I saw where I was on the agenda, a rich, full agenda towards the end of it. I thought, how do you capture an audience towards the end of the day? And I wanted to sit through, listen to this, maybe figure out, and I realized after seeing the video at lunch, it's through sympathy. 2 words, Donald Trump. So do you remember the video? Yes. So I'm an American about to move back to the United States 8 weeks before our presidential election with the very real possibility that Donald Trump will be our next president. So do you feel sorry for me now, and do I have your attention? And then, of course, on a serious note, the potential implications of that on gender equality. So let me tell you about our company and then my role in this. MSD is a large global pharmaceutical company. We operate in over 140 countries. Our mission is to quite literally, bring innovative biopharmaceutical products to the market to save and improve human lives across the world. And I truly believe that my company understands and embodies the mindset that your workforce has to represent, in our case, the patients that we serve. And so what I want to talk to you a little bit about, though, isn't MSD broadly. It's really my discipline in information technology. I'm particularly honored to be here because I'm an American male working in a male-dominated industry, information technology, and I have managed mostly men in my career. So I do come, maybe that makes me uniquely qualified in terms of diversity, and I'm honored to be able to speak to it. So I'm going to speak from that perspective, and then I'm also going to tie back to what you heard up here in that policy and metrics are important, but they're just not enough. Particularly in America, every company has them, and yet you don't see the kind of progress that you need. It's the mindset shift that you need to have, the education, the awareness, the mentoring. Those are the things, to me, that move you beyond the metrics that you do need to measure. And so what I want to talk about is what's occurred for me here in the Czech Republic, and then in my career a little bit, again, admittedly in a very male-dominated industry, around gender equality. So I first woke up to this when I was 28 years old, and I was a hotshot software engineer. I was writing 3 successful years of really producing really quality code. They put me in charge of a team of all men programmers, really good programmers, though. And we produced what we thought was just really, really good code. High quality, structured, well architected. I was working for a woman at the time, Jan Warren. And we brought her a working prototype. And we were a little bit cocky, just to be honest. And we were so proud of ourselves. And she looked at it and she said, "John, I'm sure you guys have engineered that very well, but it doesn't work for me. Look how you designed it. It's sequential. You're making me do my work sequentially." And she was, in a very tactful way, saying, "I believe that represents how you and your team think. I want to be able to do a lot of these things at the same time and not in the order that you forced me to." And then she did let me know that, in her opinion, that was maybe the difference between the way men and women, one of the differences between the way we think. And that was my first exposure to it. I walked out feeling, pretty foolish, and we adjusted. And trust me, it wasn't long before I went and recruited and got a female on the team. And it wasn't, back then in the United States, it was actually quite difficult to do when I started. So when we think about this, it's the business case for change beyond the good social case for change around gender equality that I actually think can help drive companies to take this more seriously. We know that the social implications are clear, that if you preclude 50% of the population from some workforce, it has real social implications. You isolate an entire segment of the workforce, you limit their opportunities. But then what's occurring for me is that in our field, the fight for talent is getting more and more aggressive. If you do that, it's just bad business sense. You need to have the entire population within your pool of available talent, both men and women. And then the other thing that's a social implication of excluding women from science and technology and engineering fields is it's filtering down into education. And this is what I'm seeing in the United States, unfortunately. Not only is science and engineering and technology not being nurtured in an education system for the whole population, it's particularly predominant, in my opinion, for women. And so we then create a generational problem in terms of not encouraging girls and young women to go into these disciplines. So I'm fortunate to have 3 beautiful children, 2 of them daughters, and they all have a bias for math and engineering and science, like I did. But I'm also fortunate that they went to schools that provided programs and thinking that, boys and girls don't solve problems the same way, and made it interesting for them, with a good mixture of male and female teachers. And so it allowed my daughters to stay interested in it, whereas I know friends whose daughters lost interest in this. So it's a good problem for me personally, because my 23-year-old daughter, civil engineer, is in the workforce. She gets a call almost every day with somebody interested in her, because we just don't have enough engineers in America, particularly women. But what's good for me as a father is bad for our country, and I worry about that. The metric here that I'm aware of in the Czech Republic, I think it's about 9% now in terms of the marketplace, percent of women in these fields, as well as those studying it. I don't know if that's the latest metric, but I think it's only about 9%. So, the business case for change, you've got the social case, but then the business case. I do have 2 slides. Not a big fan of slides, but there's the internal view, the inside looking out view. And look at how, this is from 1996. And at first I thought, how could I use such dated material? And then I thought, wow, if these are the trends in 1996, think about 20 years later. So from an inside looking out perspective, look at how family patterns have changed, and just think about it now. And so we have to be aware of that as employers. And everything changes in terms of how we need to think about female employees from the internal perspective, but as important, and the business case for change, is the external perspective. What this basically says in its simplest form is in 1996, when they surveyed 500 companies, global companies, not US companies, what were the biggest drivers for wanting to increase the diversity of their workforce, it was to connect with their customers and markets. The world was getting global. They, like us, like my company, wanted a workforce that could connect with a much more global set of customers. And they recognized that the economics and just the industries they worked in were much more globally diverse. So 20 years ago, this was getting recognized, and now, as you know, with the internet, everything is exponentially more global. So, good. That's it. So, and there's other studies as well. There's a Society for Women in Information Technology in the U.S. that has done extensive research. And it's similar to some statistics you saw before. Of 20,000 venture-backed companies that they surveyed, of the ones that were successful versus unsuccessful, they had twice the number of senior executives that were women. Twice the number. They were able to conclusively prove that the collective intelligence of the group, not individual average of the intelligence, but the collective intelligence of a group was significantly higher when it was a balanced mixture of men and women. And they also were able to demonstrate that companies that had that balance were much more likely to do experimentation, which leads to innovation. So again, in a field like mine that is dominated with men, that to me is just compelling the business case for change. And then I wanted to kind of end that business case discussion with a very specific example that I see in the Global Innovation Center. A couple examples. We've hired over 500 colleagues in the last 2 years. It's been an exhausting but yet energizing journey for me to do that. Now, we have about about 22% female, and the rest male. It's not as good as the rest of our company globally. Relative to our target population in the region, it's actually pretty good, but we know we need to improve it. However, that represents over 100 females in the workplace. So that, in addition to the 50 different countries, nationalities we've hired from, I see such a difference in the dynamics here in the center that I run versus the workforce that I will be going back to be very candid with you, in the US. And having managed all male teams, what I see occurring is there's a level of social interaction that I think is driven primarily by the gender diversity that is just vibrant and energetic, and I see that carry over into more productive, energetic, vibrant discussion in workplace settings, workshops, meetings, etc. And so I clearly see that happening, and I actually believe that the different nationalities is interesting to me, having lived my whole life in America, but it's the gender diversity that I see there that I think actually drives that. And then a very, very specific example that really says that there's business rationale. We have a group that we've hired. It's around user experience, creative design. The advent of the iPhone has made us realize that how usable an application is very, very important, not just the reliability of it. So we've hired a group, and we were fortunate to find some really good female talent. And what we're realizing is that men and women do use computer systems differently. And if I had a team of all males and they were designing, as I did when I was 20 plus years ago, designing the user interface for systems, we would be thinking with a very one-dimensional approach. And I'm seeing the benefits of that just in terms of how they argue with each other, which is really a healthy debate. So within IT, I'm able to now make that connection from the goodness of gender equality to a very real business impact. So we're doing things in MSD to drive this beyond the policies, but there's a laundry list. But what I wanted to focus primarily on is the networking element of it. We have a very active MSD Women's Network. It has over 4,000 participants across the globe, and we've opened a local chapter here in the Czech Republic. It's mostly women, but we have a good number of male colleagues participating too, which I think is so critical. The risk of it being only women in that is that it starts to get viewed by both the men and the women as just a club for women, and that's not what we want. We want to have the utmost criticality. And then the program globally and here in the Czech Republic, launches initiatives around mentoring and networking to make it very real. And those are the kinds of things to me that I think we all need to embrace, beyond the policies that are going to change the mindset. And I had a question here while I was here today. It was the interview that I did with public radio. And I talked about that. And she asked, do you see the resentment in the male workforce? And I said, I actually don't. If it's there, I sure don't know about it. And I've heard the compliments from the men that we've hired, which is about 3/4 of the organization, that it's good that we're taking that seriously. So I'm proud to have been a part of building this here and the diversity we have, and I hope to take some of these lessons learned back with me. So I'll end you with a thought, kind of a call to action, a call to arms, if you will, as you go out. Whatever the organizations are that you work in, that you influence, the one that's obvious is, doing that stepping back and asking the questions that you may think you have solved, but you then might realize that you don't. Like, is pay equitable? Have we created a flexible environment for the women in our workforce? Do they have the same career opportunities? And I've had that happen to me here in my 2 years where I thought that was true, and then somebody on the leadership team or our HR business partner came and corrected me, and I was very grateful for that. So you have to, even though you think it may be happening, we've got to make sure that it actually is. And then the second thing, to close on this note around the business case for change, I think one of the things that is so important is draw that line of sight from what you do directly to how it drives a business impact as well as the social impact. My example of user experience and creative design, I admit, very narrow example, but it's something that I can use, and it makes it very real for people in my very male-dominated discipline. So again, I want to thank you for this great opportunity and wish you all luck as you go forward and drive gender equality. Thanks.